everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be recommending to you some of my favorite historical fiction books. I used to not be a huge fan of historical fiction until I read one of my all-time favorite series, which I will definitely be recommending in this video, and that kind of just completely changed my perspective on historical fiction. I absolutely love it now, and I've got tons of books to recommend to you in this video. The first book is a series, and that is the Leviathan series by Scott Westerfeld. I love this book series so much. It is one of my favorite book series of all times, and it is set in World War I. We follow our main character Alec and Darren is from Britain, and she disguises herself as a boy to be in the Air Force, and Alec is a prince and he is on the run, and they end up running into each other and they just become really good friends, and just a whole bunch of craziness happens, but I really love it. I love the take on World War I in this story. If you're looking to get into historical fiction, this is my #1 recommendation. It's got steampunk element to it, and it just the story itself is really unique. So this is a really good story to kind of ease your way into historical fiction, because just the twist on it is fantastic. The next series I have is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco, and that's book 1, and then book 2 is Hunting Prince Dracula. This is set in Victorian England in the 1800s, and it is so good. So we follow our main character Audrey Rose, and she is kind of being groomed to be the perfect lady, but she hates it. She would much rather work in the morgue with her uncle and do autopsies. Then there's like a series of gruesome murders that start happening in England, and it's really cool, and I absolutely love this story so much. There is so much sass and wit with the characters. This is also another one, like if you're not a huge fan of historical fiction, this is another great recommendation to kind of ease your way into it. Next I have The Passenger Duology by Alexandra Bracken. Now this is more of a time travel book, but we definitely get some scenes from the 1700s and just kind of all over different time zones and time periods. So it's really unique, and I really like it. It's just like, it has such a diverse setting. I haven't read much on time travel, but I really enjoyed Passenger, and I need to read the second book, Wayfarer, but I highly recommend this one. I really enjoyed it. The next book I have is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. This is one of my all-time favorite books. I loved it so much, and this is set in the 1700s in Europe, and we follow our main character Monty, and he is about to go on his tour, kind of like his backpacking through Europe before he has to settle down and work on his father's estate. But I love this story so much. He's going on this adventure with his best friend Percy, who he's in love with, and his sister ends up joining, and there are pirates, and there's like a kind of like a treasure hunt, and just there's so much chaos that happens. It's so fantastic, and I love the time period in this novel so much. This is just another great recommendation for historical fiction. The next book I have is The Diviners by Libba Bray. This is a series, and like I said, the Leviathan series is really what kind of introduced me to historical fiction, or kind of, you know, like made me realize, oh, I really love historical fiction, and The Diviners is what kind of got me wanting to read more. Like once I read The Diviners, I was like, okay, I need to get my hands on more historical fiction. The Diviners is set in New York in the 1920s. It has such a unique setting, and we follow a cast of characters that have these different like magical abilities, and it has such a unique, diverse cast of characters, and the setting, I just love the setting of New York in the 1920s. Like the dialogue is so cool, and their clothing, and like kind of like their nightlife. It's a really cool setting, and it is kind of like a dark and eerie book as well. Next I have The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. This book, I had to read it in high school, and I really loved it. It's one of those books that I had to read in school that really stands out to me. So this is set in South Carolina planet in 1964, and we follow this little girl named Lily, and she is on the run with her African American maid, and the story revolves around like kind of like the times of racism, and I ended up loving this book so much. I've reread it a few times. I actually really enjoyed the movie of it as well. I thought it was a great adaptation to the book, but this is one of my favorite books that was required for reading, and this is the second book that I've ever read that I believe was historical fiction that I really enjoyed. Now, the first book that I remember reading that was historical fiction that I loved, and to this day it is one of my all-time favorite books, that is Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. It is set in, I believe, the 1800s, and we follow our main character, Winnie Foster, and she comes across a strange, peculiar family where they cannot die. And I love the story so much. I love the message of this story and the setting. It's just, I don't know, I just remember when I read this, I believe I was in either in elementary school or in middle school, and I remember just loving the story so much that I ended up, and I think we were like reading books, like we were reading it in class, but I remember I wanted the book so badly, so I went out and I asked my parents to get it for me, and it is just, honestly, to this day, I love this book, and I've read it multiple times since reading it for the first time, like, gosh, 15 years ago, something crazy like that. And the last recommendation I have is another series, and that is the Infernal Devices trilogy by Cassandra Clare, and this is set in England in the 1800s, and it follows the Shadowhunter world, but it's like way before the Mortal Instruments time. So the Mortal Instrument is set in like present day New York, and this is set in London way before, kind of like we're learning about like the history of all of the different like Shadowhunter families that we're introduced to in the Mortal Instruments. And I love this so much. Like, I think I liked this series a little bit more than the Mortal Instruments series, and I hear that a lot. A lot of people love the Infernal Devices trilogy, but it's just, there's something about the setting, like the London aspect of it, and it being set in the 1800s, and just like the way they speak with one another, and their dialogue and their mannerisms is just really cool. Plus, I love the historical part of it, like learning the different family trees from the families that we're introduced to in the Mortal Instruments series. I thought that added such an unique concept to the story. I loved going back in time and seeing why the families are to where they are today in the Mortal Instruments series. Okay, well, that is it for this video. Comment down below, let me know some historical fiction recommendations that you have, because it's kind of a new genre that I've been introduced to recently, or I've gotten more into recently, and I really want to read more historical fiction. So if you have any recommendations, please leave them down below. I'm very interested, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!